This story is titled, My Parents Constantly Mocked Me, Calling Me a Total Loser, until a surprising twist transformed my life by trading worthless junk into an unexpected opportunity. Hey everyone, I'm a 30-year-old guy who's been treated like a walking joke by my own family for as long as I can remember. Ever since childhood, they made me feel like I was less than everyone else, especially compared to my younger brother. But life had other plans for me, and this story is about how everything changed. So buckle up and grab your snacks, because this is going to be a wild ride. Growing up, my family always favored my younger brother. Let's call him Ryan. He's 27 now, but the favoritism started when we were just kids. I remember when Ryan was in kindergarten. His finger paintings went into expensive frames and were hung proudly in the living room where visitors could admire them. Meanwhile, when I was 8 years old, I found one of my drawings in the garbage. After that, I stopped showing my mom my artwork altogether. What was the point? As we got older, the favoritism only became more obvious and painful. Ryan joined Little League Baseball, and my parents never missed a single game, even when his team was terrible and he mostly just warmed the bench. They bought him new equipment constantly and threw him ice cream parties whether his team won or lost. It was clear that just participating was enough to earn their praise and support. Meanwhile, I saved my allowance for months to buy model car kits. I spent hours putting them together with insane attention to detail. When I asked if I could display them on the mantle, my dad said they didn't match the decor and banished my creations to my bedroom. Even there, they weren't safe, as my mom would accidentally break them when cleaning. The message was clear. My interests and accomplishments simply didn't matter. By high school, the situation had become ridiculous. Ryan joined the debate team, and my parents drove 4 hours each way for his tournaments, staying in hotels and taking him to fancy dinners afterward. They spared no expense to support his activities and celebrate his achievements, no matter how minor. I finally found my place in the auto shop program. I was actually pretty good with engines and loved the work. My teacher even let me take on more advanced projects because I picked things up so quickly. When I made it to the state competition and won first place in my category, my parents couldn't be bothered to show up. Their excuse? Sorry, we can't make it. Your dad's got a thing at work. That was all I got for the biggest achievement of my young life. For graduation, Ryan got a new gaming PC, top of the line with all the bells and whistles. I asked for tools for my planned mechanic career. My dad got me a cheap set from a discount store that broke within a month. He told me to get a real job instead of playing with cars. Apparently, fixing things that people rely on every day isn't real work in his eyes. Now, as adults, the pattern continues, but has gotten even worse. My parents have Ryan's corporate achievements printed and framed. His first promotion letter, his MBA diploma, a photo of him with the CEO. Meanwhile, my high school diploma, trade school certification, and master mechanic license got nothing but resentment. They hated the fact that I was a mechanic, despite it being something I was good at and genuinely enjoyed. At this point, their consistency in making me feel like garbage for loving something that actually makes me happy is almost impressive. When I finally moved out, my place was anything but a house you'd see in a magazine. I was living in a trailer for a while, and the whole thing would shake whenever trucks drove by too fast on the nearby road. The heater was either freezing cold or burning hot, never a comfortable middle ground. My bedroom was the size of a closet, and my kitchen was basically wherever I decided to put down my takeout bag. But at least nobody was there telling me what a disappointment I was 24/7, so I counted it as an upgrade. I was saving money for new tools during this time, focusing on building my future rather than wallowing in my circumstances. I still visited my family occasionally, though every damn family gathering played out like the same horrible script. Ryan would roll up in his fancy suit, talking about his latest promotion at his corporate job. The truth is, the dude barely did any real work, just endless meetings and PowerPoints. But he was pulling in good money, which was all my parents cared about. He had a pretty wife named Veronica, drove a Mercedes he was probably making payments on forever, and lived in a regular condo that my parents acted like was freaking Buckingham Palace. It wasn't anything crazy special, but it was certainly way better than my situation, and my parents never let me forget it. Meanwhile, I'd show up with grease under my nails after a 12-hour shift at my garage. My mom would literally sigh when she saw me, as if my life choices were physically painful for her to witness. My dad was always asking when I was going to get a real job, at least twice per family dinner. Then he'd launch into some story about how Ryan just got another bonus or whatever accomplishment he was being celebrated for that week. My aunts and uncles would smile at me with that fake pity that really meant, "Thank God our kids didn't turn out like you." The final straw came last Christmas. Ryan had just gotten some promotion at work, and my parents actually brought out a cake to celebrate. A cake at Christmas dinner, as if we needed another dessert besides the usual holiday spread. It was over the top, even for them. Meanwhile, I mentioned I'd finally paid off my toolbox, a significant achievement for me and my financial situation, and my dad actually laughed. He straight up laughed and said, "Well, I guess we should be thankful Tyler didn't go bankrupt this year." Everyone joined in, laughing like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Then my mom started with her usual, "When are you going to get a real career" routine? Before I could even answer, Ryan jumped in with, "Maybe Tyler could work for me. We need someone to clean the office parking lot." The whole table erupted in laughter again. Even my cousin's kids were giggling. I was sitting there getting humiliated by my own family, and it felt like they all shared this weird interest in making me look and feel like shit. But it was what happened next that truly broke me. My dad raised his glass for a toast and said, "To Ryan, the son who didn't waste his potential." No one even looked at me, like I wasn't even there, like I didn't even matter enough to acknowledge how deeply that cut. In that moment, I realized they didn't just prefer Ryan. They didn't see me as worth anything at all. And that left a wound deeper than all the previous slights combined. I stood up fast, knocking over my chair in the process. Nobody even cared or asked if I was okay. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, but as I left, I could hear them still laughing, with my dad saying, "There he goes again, can't take a joke." I sat in my truck for 5 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel, swallowing back what felt like broken glass in my throat. That was the last time I went to a family dinner. Little did they know, this failure was about to turn his life around in a way none of them could imagine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For months after that Christmas disaster, I continued running my tiny garage. The sign was half broken and only lit up at night when it felt like it, which was a perfect metaphor for my life at that point. Business was, well, it kept me eating most days. I'd fix radiators, change oil, patch tires, the basic stuff that doesn't make you rich but keeps the lights on most of the time. My neighbor Doug made it his personal mission to remind me how pathetic my life was. The dude would literally stand outside in his nasty ass bathrobe, watching me work and making comments about my high-end repair business while sipping whatever was in his mug at 7 a.m. And I can guarantee you it definitely wasn't coffee. The customers weren't much better. They were always haggling over prices like I was running some kind of charity. "Can't you do it any cheaper?" they'd ask while standing next to their $60,000 SUVs. Sure, let me just pay my bills with exposure and good vibes. Most days I was just going through the motions. Wake up in a cold trailer, grab gas station coffee, fix cars, go home to my empty trailer, repeat. The American dream, am I right? My social life was basically non-existent. It's hard to date when you're always covered in motor oil and can barely afford to buy yourself dinner, let alone take someone out. So there I was, living the dream in my crappy trailer, eating gas station burritos, and fixing beater cars for people who haggled over every damn dollar. Until the day came that changed my life in the most unexpected ways. One morning, after dealing with a particularly annoying customer who wanted me to basically rebuild his transmission for the price of an oil change, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was old Frank Wagner. I hadn't heard from him in years. He used to let me help out on his farm when I was a kid, one of the few adults who didn't treat me like I was one step above scum. Frank was this classic old-school farmer type, the kind of guy who could fix anything with duct tape, baling wire, and pure stubbornness. His barn was always full of half-finished projects from like the Bush era, collecting dust and waiting for the day he'd get back to them. So Frank says he has some heap of metal sitting in his barn for decades, and wondered if I wanted it before he sent it to the scrapyard. Something in his voice made me curious. And honestly, I needed a break from staring at the pile of overdue bills on my counter that were organizing themselves into pay me or else formations. Driving out to Frank's place was like stepping into a time machine. Same old faded billboards advertising motels with color TV like that was still impressive. Same pothole-filled roads that the county promised to fix every election year and mysteriously forgot about the day after. Frank hadn't changed either. Same overalls. Same cigarette permanently attached to his lip like it was growing there. His barn looked one strong wind away from total collapse. When I went inside, my eyes struggled to adjust to the dim light. Frank wasn't big on fancy things like adequate lighting. But as my vision cleared, I saw something in the dark corner that made my heart stop. Holy shit. Under decades of dust and grime was a 1969 Shelby GT 500 ACR. My jaw dropped and my heart literally skipped a beat. For you non-car guys, finding this in a barn is like finding an original Picasso at a yard sale priced at $5. It's the automotive equivalent of buried treasure. I tried to act cool while checking the VIN to make sure it was legit, but I was so stunned that I dropped my phone twice. With shaking hands, I asked Frank what he wanted for it, trying to sound casual like, "Oh yeah, just another day finding legendary muscle cars in barns." When he said $200, the same price the scrapyard offered for the weight, I thought I was having a stroke. This car, even as a rust bucket, was worth way more than everything I owned combined. Like, not even close. I mean, what the actual fuck? That was the one chance that would never repeat itself. Without thinking, I paid him before he could change his mind, or someone could burst in and yell, "Just kidding!" I tried to act like this was just a normal Tuesday transaction, and not me basically winning the lottery. Frank didn't even seem to care. Just pocketed the money and asked if I needed help loading it. The man had no idea what he had just let go of. Towing that car back to my place was when the circus started. The second I pulled into my driveway with this dusty Shelby, my neighbor Doug started cackling like a hyena choking on a chicken bone. He called over other neighbors to come see what Tyler dragged home this time. They all stood there pointing and laughing like I just brought home literal garbage. One of the teenagers actually called out, "Hey man, you building a parade float?" Real comedian, that kid. Future and stand-up for sure. Later that day, my phone went absolutely nuts. Ryan called first, of course. He wanted to know if Dad was serious about me buying some junk car. I told him it wasn't just any car. It was a Shelby GT 500. His response? "Oh, great. So you spent money you don't have on a rusted-out piece of history nobody cares about." Then he launched into this whole lecture about how I should be investing in my future instead of playing with garbage. Pretty rich coming from a guy who went into debt for a Mercedes just to look cool in the company parking lot. My parents called next. Dad wanted to know if I'd finally lost it, and Mom just kept sighing into the phone like I'd personally ruined her retirement plans. I hung up mid-lecture. Looking at that dusty Shelby sitting in my driveway, I decided I was going to restore this car if it killed me, then rub it in all their smug faces. But reality hit pretty quick. I had exactly $112 in my bank account. That was it. Just enough to keep the lights on, buy groceries, and maybe start on the car. But a full restoration? That takes serious cash. Parts for these classics aren't exactly on the clearance rack at Walmart. The smart thing would have been to sell it right then, make a quick profit from a collector, and move on with my life. But I've never been accused of doing the smart thing. That's not my brand. This wasn't just a car. This was my shot. Maybe my only shot at proving I wasn't the family failure they all thought I was. I was all in, consequences be damned. And listen, I had no idea yet how much this pile of junk was about to change my entire life. The next few months of my life were basically work, car, sleep, sometimes, repeat. I'd work my regular job all day fixing other people's beaters, grab whatever cheap food was on sale at the gas station, then work on the Shelby until 2 or 3 a.m. First order of business was seeing what I was actually working with. It was worse than I thought. The more dirt I cleaned off, the more problems I found. Rust had eaten through parts of the floor pan. The upholstery looked like several generations of mice had called it home. And they had. The wiring was a nightmare. The previous owner had done some creative modifications that would have made an electrician cry. And finding parts? Total nightmare. Online sellers wanted insane money for absolute crap. Some dude in Nevada wanted $1,200 for a steering column that looked like it had been used as a boat anchor for the past decade. The setbacks just kept coming, like they were on a damn schedule. First, I found a whole mouse family living in my engine bay. They'd chewed through wires, built nests everywhere, and basically turned the car into their personal condo complex. One of them actually poked his head out while I was inspecting the damage. He had the audacity to look like he was charging me rent. Then my first attempt at painting was a total disaster. I'd watched like 50 YouTube tutorials thinking, how hard can this be? Turns out, very hard. The paint came out all uneven and somehow highlighted every flaw instead of covering them. I had to sand it all down and start over, wasting time and money I didn't have. Speaking of money, it was disappearing fast. I'd burned through most of my savings, and the car still needed tons of work. Parts, tools, materials, it all adds up quick. So I did the only thing I could. I bet everything. I walked into a bank and took out a $50,000 loan, secured by my trailer and garage. If the restoration failed, I'd be completely homeless. Working nights on the Shelby became my new normal. My hands were constantly covered in cuts and grease that no amount of scrubbing could remove. My back felt like hell. I was surviving on energy drinks and whatever food could be eaten with one hand while the other held a wrench. One night while digging through the glove box, I found something interesting. An old pack of Camels with a yellowed note tucked inside. It said, "Take care of her, she's got more heart than most people I know." Reading that note, sitting there covered in grease and exhaustion, I realized someone had actually loved this machine once, and now it was my job to bring it back. Progress was painfully slow, though. Every time I fixed one thing, I'd discover 3 more problems hiding behind it. It was like playing mechanical whack-a-mole. The engine needed a complete rebuild. The transmission was shot. The suspension was basically being held together by rust and prayers. But slowly, very slowly, the car started coming back to life. The frame was solid again. The engine block was cleaned and ready for rebuilding. The interior was stripped and prepped for new upholstery. It was still a long way from done, but for the first time I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And man, that light looked a lot like a middle finger, pointed straight at everyone who'd laughed at me, especially my family. Every night was the same routine until one afternoon, while I was under the car wrestling with a bolt that must have been installed by Satan himself, I heard someone clear their throat. I smacked my head coming out. Smooth move, I know, and found this woman with a camera standing there. Her name was Olivia, 26, and she said she was a photographer working on a project about American craftsmanship. She'd spotted the Shelby from the road and wanted to take some pictures. I was about to tell her to get lost, not in the mood for more people laughing at my junk car, but something stopped me. Unlike literally everyone else in my life, Olivia didn't look at the car like it was garbage. She walked around it nodding, asking smart questions about the restoration. She actually knew her stuff, identified it as a '69 Shelby without seeing any badges, asked about the original specs, what parts I was keeping original versus updating. Not the basic car pretty vroom vroom questions that most people ask when they're pretending to be interested. When she asked if she could write about my project for her blog, I figured why not? At least someone might get something out of my suffering. Plus, not going to lie, having an attractive woman actually interested in my project was a nice change from my neighbors pointing and laughing. Olivia started coming by regularly. She'd take photos while I worked, documenting the transformation. What really surprised me was how she'd jump in to help, researching parts online, connecting me with collectors, even getting her hands dirty when needed. She didn't seem to mind the grease or the long hours. It was weird, honestly. I wasn't used to anyone actually believing in one of my projects. About a month later, her blog post about my restoration project blew up. The comments section exploded with other car enthusiasts offering advice, parts, and encouragement. Some dude in Montana actually mailed me an original Shelby emblem for free. He said it had been sitting in his garage for years and belonged on a car being properly restored. Suddenly, my inbox was flooded with messages from strangers offering parts, tips, even wanting to come see the car in person. It was surreal. Some guy with a YouTube channel about classic cars wanted to do a feature. Then a local news station called. Then a car magazine wanted to do a spread. Overnight, I went from that loser working on a junker to that dedicated craftsman saving American automotive history. Funny how perception changes, huh? And guess who suddenly remembered I existed? Yep, my family. Mom called first, of course, acting concerned about all the attention and whether it was distracting me from finding stable employment. Translation: you're still a loser, but now people are noticing you, which reflects on us. Ryan showed up at my garage uninvited in his Mercedes. He walked around the Shelby with this look like he was smelling something bad, pretending to be impressed while pointing out every flaw he could find. "You know," he said, thinking he was being helpful, "you should sell it now while people actually care. Strike while the iron's hot." When I told him I wasn't selling, he switched tactics. "Well, if you're serious about this, you should let me handle the business side. That's my expertise after all." Translation: let me control any money you might make because clearly you're too stupid to handle it. Later that evening, my parents dropped by too. They offered to help me if I sold the car. Dad would put something together to invest the money properly. After years of treating me like a failure, now they wanted to swoop in and take over when there was potential for profit. I couldn't believe the audacity. They'd never supported me, never respected me, and now they wanted to cash in on my hard work. I told them all to get lost. Okay, I use stronger language than that, but you get the idea. Meanwhile, Olivia and I were spending more and more time together. She was smart, funny, and for some reason seemed to actually enjoy my company. It was nice having someone in my corner for once. With her help, the restoration picked up speed. She found some guy in Oregon who had an original carburetor for half what I'd expected to pay. Another time, she tracked down a set of vintage wheels that were perfect. The car was finally starting to look like a car again. So after countless all-nighters, thousands of dollars, and enough frustration to fill the Grand Canyon, the Shelby was finally finished. And let me tell you, the transformation was insane. Sorry for the caps, but I get excited even thinking about it. What had once been a rust bucket was now a gleaming blue and white masterpiece that looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1969. I stood in my garage just staring at it for a solid hour after I finished the final touches. And God, the beauty of that baby made my heart melt. Every chrome piece shined, the interior smelled like fresh leather, and the paint job was flawless. Second attempt was the charm. It didn't even look like the same car anymore. But the real moment of truth was turning the key. I'd completely rebuilt the engine, and despite triple-checking everything, there's always that moment of, did I fuck something up? When you start it for the first time. I slid into the driver's seat, took a deep breath, and turned the key. And that V8 roared to life like a beast. No coughing, no sputtering, just raw American muscle announcing its return to the world. The sound vibrated through my entire body, and I'm not ashamed to admit I got emotional. After all those months of blood, sweat, and maxed out credit cards, hearing that engine purr made me forget all the suffering. Olivia was there catching it all on camera, looking as pumped as I was. "Holy shit, Tyler," she said. "You actually did it." The fact that she sounded surprised tells you how bad things looked when I started. When Olivia asked what I planned to do next, I told her about Prestige Auctions in Boston. If you're not familiar, it's basically the Super Bowl for classic car sales. The best of the best end up there, and serious collectors come ready to drop serious cash. It was time to see if all this work would actually pay off, or if I just created the world's most expensive hobby. Walking into that auction was intimidating as hell. $1-million cars everywhere, rich collectors in expensive suits, and me in my nicest pair of jeans and a button-up I'd bought specifically for this day. I felt like I was crashing a party I shouldn't be at. But when they rolled my Shelby onto the stage, the room changed. People were actually impressed with my work, with my car. The piece of junk everyone had laughed at was now commanding attention. The bidding started at $200,000. I nearly passed out when they announced the starting bid. My hands were shaking as the numbers kept climbing. $250,000, $300,000, $350,000. Olivia was squeezing my arm with each bid. When the hammer finally dropped at $500,000, I thought I was going to pass out. $500,000 for a car I bought for $200. The room erupted in applause, but it sounded distant, like I was underwater or something. After taxes and fees, I walked away with $400,000. More money than I'd ever imagined having. More than I'd make in 10 years at my garage. Life-changing money. While I drove back home, I kept checking my phone to make sure the bank transfer was real, that I hadn't hallucinated the whole thing. Olivia and I stopped at some bar in Boston to celebrate. For once, I wasn't worried about the bill or calculating how many oil changes I'd need to do to afford it. As soon as the money hit my account, my phone blew up. Not with congratulations, nope. It was my family. Mom called first, suddenly talking about how they'd always believed in me, and how they'd sacrificed so much raising me. She actually suggested I should give back to the family now that I had been blessed. Her exact words, "Your father and I put everything into raising you. We sacrificed so much, and now that you have this blessing, don't you think it's time to give back?" I nearly choked on my soda. Give back? Where were they when I was working until my hands bled? Where was this family support when I needed a loan for the restoration? Really? And after all the disrespect and humiliation, they still had the nerve. Unbelievable. But wait, it didn't stop there. Ryan was even worse. Suddenly, I was his bro, and he had all these investment opportunities that needed capital. He kept saying crap like, I can help you grow your money. Funny how he never offered to help when I was struggling. He actually said, look, man, I've been thinking. You did good with the car, but if you really want to grow your money, you should invest in something solid. I've got a business idea. I hung up before he could finish his sentence. Then came the parade of relatives I barely knew. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who'd ignored me for years were suddenly texting about catching up. One cousin straight up asked for a loan to start a business. Uncle Rick called about some can't-miss real estate opportunity that just needed a small investment. Even my mom's weird cousin, who I'd met maybe twice, reached out asking if I could help with his kid's college fund. Funny how you get all the attention once they smell you have money. Olivia watched me scrolling through these messages with this disgusted look on her face. When she asked if I was going to give them money, I laughed and said, "Of course not! Have you lost your mind? Those assholes can go screw themselves!" For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back at what my family thought. I wasn't desperate for their approval. I wasn't the family screw-up anymore, and that felt even better than the money. With $400,000 in the bank, I had options. I could have bought a nice house, invested in stocks, or just chilled for a few years. Hell, I could have blown it all on stupid crap and still been ahead of where I started. But Olivia and I had bigger ideas. Over burgers one night, we mapped out our plan. Olivia suggested focusing on classic restorations, high-end stuff like what I did with the Shelby, but as an actual business. The next day, we checked out this massive garage space just outside town. It had room for at least 10 cars, multiple lifts, and an actual office. By the end of the day, I'd signed a lease, and Vintage Muscle Works was officially born. I hired mechanics who knew their stuff and set up the shop exactly how I wanted. Olivia handled all the business stuff: marketing, bookkeeping, website, social media. She also had this crazy ability to find barn finds, classic cars that had been sitting forgotten for decades. Our first major project was this 1971 Dodge Charger we found rotting in some farmer's backyard. Months of hard work later, that Charger rolled out of our shop looking factory fresh and sold for $150,000 within a week. Word spread fast. Our waiting list grew to 6 months, then a year. We expanded, hired more people, and by the end of our first year, we'd broken $1.1 million in revenue. Not bad for a guy who was eating gas station food a year earlier, right? Through all of this, Olivia and I became more than business partners. One night after locking up the shop, I took her back to that bar in Boston where we'd celebrated my auction win and proposed. She said yes before I could even finish asking. With the business booming, we bought a house near Lake Michigan, the kind of place I used to drive by and wonder who the hell could afford to live there. Of course, Ryan couldn't stay away. He showed up unannounced, pretending to be impressed with my latest project, a 70 Chevelle. Then he started pitching me about expanding the business and bringing in investors, meaning him, obviously. I cut him off and told him if he needed his Mercedes painted, I'd give him the family discount of $600, which was about double the going rate. The look on his face was priceless, but there was one last thing I needed to do. Olivia and I drove back to Frank's farm, finding the old man still sitting on his porch, sipping tea like nothing had changed. When I handed him an envelope with $50,000 inside, he tried to refuse it. I told him I wouldn't be where I was without that car, and it wouldn't feel right not sharing some of the success with the guy who made it possible. He finally took it, grumbling about me being stubborn. That night, sitting on the deck of our lake house with Olivia beside me, I thought about how far I'd come. From the family disappointment to running a successful business doing what I loved, and having this amazing woman with me through all of it. Man, I couldn't be more grateful. I was living my dream. My family always said I'd never amount to anything. I'd never find stability. They were all wrong. And the best part? I didn't need their approval anymore. Fast forward 2 years. I thought you'd want to hear how things turned out. It's been an interesting ride. First off, thanks for all the support when I shared my story. That meant a lot during some really tough times. For those who need a refresher, I was the loser brother who bought a rusted Shelby GT 500 for $200, restored it, sold it for $500,000, and started my own classic car restoration business while telling my toxic family to kick rocks. Now for the life update. These last couple of years have been incredible. Vintage Muscle Works has become the name in classic restoration. We have a 2-year waiting list of clients willing to pay premium prices. We've expanded to a staff of 15, and I've got more work than I know what to do with. Olivia and I got married 1 year ago. She still handles all the business side, and now she's my perfect wife. I still get my hands dirty in the shop every day. Perfect balance. Life couldn't be better. I basically never thought about my toxic family anymore. Haven't spoken to any of them since Ryan showed up trying to get a piece of my business 4 years ago. I blocked them all after my dad suggested again that he could help invest the money properly. So I haven't heard from them. Too busy, too happy, and I didn't bother bringing them back into my life now that I'm thriving. They stopped trying to contact me too for 2 years. But then yesterday, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Imagine my face when I opened the door to see my parents and Ryan standing there, looking like they'd aged about 20 years. My dad's hair had gone completely gray. My mom's face was lined with stress, and Ryan, the guy who used to show up in pressed suits with that smug smile, he looked like absolute garbage. "Oh, wow, you guys look like hell. What do you want?" I said. "Tyler, it's been a while. Can we come in? We need to talk," my dad said. I should have slammed the door right then, but where would be the fun in that? I needed to see it for myself, because if they hadn't gotten beaten up by karma, what could possibly have brought the Golden family to my doorstep after all this time? So I stepped aside and let them in. They sat awkwardly in my living room, eyes darting around at the expensive furniture, the view of the lake, the photos of me and Olivia with our classic cars. My dad cleared his throat about 5 times before Ryan finally spoke up. "So, nice place you got here," he said, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "Thanks, I know. What do you want?" I replied. My dad finally got to the point. "Son, we're in a bit of a situation. There's been some unfortunate developments. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch. Turns out Veronica, Ryan's perfect wife, had been planning her exit strategy for years. She'd slowly convinced Ryan to put their house and both cars in her name for tax purposes. Then, she emptied their joint accounts, filed for divorce, and moved in with some real estate bro. I had to hold back the laugh. The golden child was reduced to living with his parents again. My mom jumped in. "And with your father's medical bills and the mortgage, we're struggling, Tyler. So you came to me for money, of course you did," I said flatly. Not a question. "We're family," my dad said, like that explained everything. "We've always been there for each other." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Always been there for each other? That's hilarious. Where were you when— Oh right, you were telling me to get a real job and mocking me at Christmas dinner, humiliating me in front of everyone." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Tyler, we all make mistakes." "Shut up," I cut him off. "A mistake is buying milk when you meant to get orange juice. What you guys did was systematic, deliberate abuse for years." My mom started crying. "We were just trying to motivate you. By telling me I was worthless? By toasting to your only son who didn't waste his potential? That's not motivation." I was tossed aside, told I was nothing. My dad tried again. "Son, we're proud of what you've accomplished. We really are. And we know we don't deserve your help, but—" "You're right, you don't," I interrupted. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear them thinking about how they'd miscalculated this whole situation. "Really, Tyler?" Ryan finally said, a hint of the old entitlement creeping back into his voice. "You just going to let your family lose their house?" I stood up. "Funny how I'm suddenly family now that you need something from me. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do." My dad stood up, his face turning red. "You ungrateful little—" "Dad," Ryan warned, pulling him back. "We need him." I laughed again as I showed them to the door. My mom tried one last guilt trip as they were leaving. "Don't you want to reconnect with your family? Life is short, Tyler." I stopped and looked her dead in the eyes. "What I want is to be surrounded by people who believe in me unconditionally. You didn't make the cut. And I already have those people now. Now get out and never show me your faces again." After they left, I watched their beat-up sedan, definitely not a Mercedes, pull out of my driveway. Olivia came up behind me. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm great, actually. That night I slept better than I had in years." Sometimes karma takes the scenic route, but damn if it doesn't arrive in style. To the people asking if I'd adopt them because their family sucks too, I'm flattered, but no. To the one suggesting I should have offered to help but with humiliating conditions attached, that's some next-level petty revenge I didn't even consider. But thanks for the mindful suggestion, LOL. The lesson here? Success is the best revenge, and family isn't about blood. It's about who actually gives a damn about you. Olivia and my team at the shop? They're my real family now, and my life has never been better. So if you're out there being treated like crap by people who should support you, Just know that sometimes the best response is to go build something amazing without them. And when they come crawling back, the look on their faces will be worth every second of struggle, worth every drop of blood, sweat, and tears, worth every sleepless night, worth every empty gas station dinner, worth it all. Because in the end, I got everything they said I would never have, and they got exactly what they deserved. Absolutely nothing from me.